Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering the Martin Zubimendi links to Liverpool. Strong links there. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Bayern Leverkusen and whether or not they can retain their Bundesliga title. We'll talk about some of the top teams contending for the Bundesliga and just overall top thoughts about the Bundesliga this upcoming season. We'll discuss the conclusion of Chelsea's preseason and should they be worried that some of these bad mistakes that we have seen, some of this negative moments that we've seen from Chelsea this preseason, whether or not people or the club should be worried entering the start of the season. We'll discuss the men's Olympic bronze medal game preview. We'll preview that game with Egypt taking on Morocco. And then make sure you stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my thoughts on some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. Before we start off, I'd like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions that come in during the show. So to ensure that your questions get read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net with your questions. This puts your questions at the top of the list so that I can see it, and it also really helps grow the show. So again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. We have to start off with the strong Zubimendi links to Liverpool. Martin Zubimendi, Spanish national team midfielder. A big part of the team that won the European Championship. Wasn't necessarily a starter, but has his moments where he was critical off the bench. And in the European Cup final, Championship final against England, he had to play the entire second half because of Rodri coming off, and he played really well in that final, in that second half. After Rodri sustained that injury, and he was really good. He was really good at moving the ball, being tidy, and he was able to be part of a team that won the European Championship, and he's overall a decent player. He was on the bench for Spain, which obviously when you have the midfield of what they can deploy of a Rodri, Pedri, Dani Olmo, who's also off the bench, but this is a player. He has a very good ability in terms of passing range, in terms of short intermediate passes, in terms of midfield. He can be part of a midfield that can dominate in terms of possession. Very good on the ball, like every other Spanish midfielder. Has a good touch, can play the short balls, can play the medium balls. Has the possibility, the capacity to once in a while hits the long balls, but that's not really his game. And overall, he's a tidy player. He's clever. There's a little bit of a lack of athleticism. He's not the biggest for that 6 role that he's going to play, a defensive midfield role. He's not the biggest. He's not the most athletic as well. He's not going to do much of the defensive duties that a Rodri or that a Rodri would do, or that a traditional number 6 would do in terms of covering spaces, in terms of the back line, covering the center backs, covering the full backs. Not really his game. He's not someone that sit in and defend. He will work hard. He has work rate, but that's just not. He's physically, there's a little bit of a lack of athleticism there. Now you're going into a Liverpool midfield that traditionally with Jurgen Klopp, you want a little bit more athleticism there, and you want heavy work rate. Jordan Henderson, he wasn't himself one of the most athletic player, and he wasn't the most technically gifted player, but he'd work really hard. He was the leader, he was the captain, and he would cover holes for the fullbacks whenever they push up the field, or he'd be a protector in between the center halves. That's not really what Martin Zubimendi does, but this is a new team, a new system under Arne Slot, and they're gonna want to, with Arne Slot, they're not gonna do what the Gengen press that Jurgen Klopp did for Liverpool in terms of pressing high up the field. And yes, I have seen your comment. I'm gonna talk about it at the end of the segment. Rakshit, But speaking of Zubimendi, though, um, I lost my train of thought there. But yes, with Arne Slot coming in, this is going to be a team that's going to want to control the ball, keep possession in midfield. And I think Zubimendi is a better complement to McAllister and Dominic Soboslai than Endo would be in terms of being able to keep possession of the ball, to control in midfield, to dominate the games with possession. I think Zubimendi has more quality in terms of on the ball than Endo. I do think what Endo provides that Zubimendi can't is a little bit more athleticism, a little bit better ability to cover holes in the defense that fullbacks might leave going forward, or the center backs being out split wide, someone that can come in between them and serve as sort of like an extra third center back. I think Endo gives you more of that, but in terms of ball ability, ball being able to control the ball, just pure quality, Zubimendi. I think it's a very good player. And the thing is, he's only going to be 20. He's only 25 years old. This is the guy that you're going to get many years of. He has a 60 million release clause, 60 million euros release clause. So, which is not absolutely ridiculous. It's not absolutely ridiculous. 60 million nowadays. I wouldn't spend. There's no way I would spend 60 million on Martin Zubimendi. But nowadays, people are priced very, very highly. You have Julian Alvarez, a bench striker at Manchester City, going for almost 90 million. It's just this day and age, the economy. To get quality players, you have to spend a crazy amount of money. That's the day that we live in today. As far as Zubimendi, Liverpool are made it clear they are willing to trigger Martin Zubimendi's release clause. Real Sociedad, they expect Martin Zubimendi to accept the move to Liverpool, to accept the fees, like in terms of the personal negotiations. Clubs, the thing is right now, clubs, they still, between Real Sociedad and Liverpool, they still need to agree on a transfer fee unless Liverpool decide to trigger the release clause, in which I saw another report that Liverpool would be willing to trigger the release clause. So I believe that this move is very, very likely. It'll happen. I do think it'll very happen. And again, it's brilliant business by Liverpool in terms of there's been clubs throughout this sort of windows. Liverpool, they do their transfer business pretty well in terms of they don't spend a lot of money, because that's never been a club that they do in terms of net spend. They never did. But whenever they want to get a player, they're very clinical about it, and they do it quickly. There's been players. Zubimendi has been linked to other clubs for a while now. Arsenal has been on for multiple weeks. Liverpool, there's no talks about Liverpool. Liverpool come in within a day, boom, they get it done. You saw Cody Gakpo to Manchester United. It was weeks and weeks and weeks, and even going back months. There was a little bit talks in the summer, and then in winter break after the World Cup, it was weeks of these rumors and these links, and Man United heavily trying to go after Cody Gakpo. Liverpool come in, one swoop, boom. We didn't even think Liverpool was a possibility. We wake up the next day and boom, Liverpool have got Cody Gakpo. That's kind of how they do business. They do a very, very good job of keeping the players that they want in private, in-house, and being very ruthless and clinical in the way that they go after their players. Brilliant business done by Liverpool if they're able to get this done. But I will say at the same time, it's going to be very interesting to see it. Because in my opinion, with Zubimendi going in with McAllister and Dominic Soboslai, that sort of midfield is a little open in terms of there's a little bit of a lack of athleticism there. With guys like McAllister, and McAllister will work, but with guys like McAllister and Dominic Soboslai, those are more quality players in terms of players on the ball. You'd want a little bit more of a defensive presence from your holding midfielder, because McAllister, yes, he'll run around and he'll work hard, Soboslai the same, but they're not really defensive workhorses in the midfield. You would think, you would want somebody that can do a little bit more of the defensive work. That's why Endo became a little bit valuable in that second half of the season. He was able to be that sort of backbone of that midfield. I think with Zubimendi coming in, you get more quality, you get more ball retention, but what happens when you lose the ball? What happens in transition? Who's going to be the guy? Let's say, Liverpool, they still continue to push up their fullbacks. Who's going to be the guy that covers holes in the defense? That's really that sort of, like defensive number 6. They don't have that. And you can only have so much of the ball. You're going to have to defend eventually. You will have to defend eventually. But I do think he'll be able to help Liverpool retain the ball. And I think Arne Slot will be able to adapt around Zubimendi's weaknesses. I do. I think Zubimendi is a player with some ability. I think overall his passing range, he needs to be able to play the long ball a little bit better for him to be a little bit more effective. Needs to improve that part of his game because everything he does is intermediate, short range sort of passing, But yeah, I definitely think he's a sort of player that can receive the ball off the back line and be comfortable, That's, there's quality there. There really is. He played 4 matches at the European Championship. So yeah, I think it's overall decent signing for Liverpool. I do think Liverpool, for them to really make the next move, they just need to build this sort of continuity around Arne Slot with this new team, with the new tactics. That's really what is going to be the thing that pushes them into being able to compete in this following year for something, because you're not going to get the player here or a player in here, a player there that's going to drastically improve. There's already some ability in this team. Is whether or not that Arne Slot can implement a system, if there's a sort of camaraderie amongst the team, a sort of tactical understanding of how to play under Arne Slot, and if they're able to execute it, that is what will take them to the next level. Not a signing here or there. But signings will help, like Zubimendi, that will help. Even if he's not a starter right away, someone that can, progressively turn into a starter, but also be a key role off the bench, like what he was for Spain at the European Championship. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll discuss Bayern Leverkusen retaining their Bundesliga title.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed Zubimendi and his strong links to Liverpool. We move on to talk about this upcoming Bundesliga season. So we all know, unless you were living under a rock, that Bayer Leverkusen was able to completely run away with the Bundesliga last season. Completely ran away with it. They won unbeaten. They were finished unbeaten throughout the entire Premier League, entire Bundesliga campaign, finishing with 28 wins and 6 draws, 90 points, and a 34-game season, because they don't play 38 games like the Premier League does. They play 34. So getting 90 points, finishing 28 wins and 6 draws is extremely, extremely impressive. And I think what's almost as much impressive, if not even more, is the fact that in all competitions all year, they only lost one game, and it was their second to last game of the season. It was the Europa League final against Atalanta. But they were that one game away from winning a treble. Yes, not a Champions League treble, but a Europa League treble. and finishing the whole year unbeaten. That has, that in my opinion goes down as one of the greatest seasons of all time, and probably the greatest Bundesliga team of all time. And I think there was a Bayern team that won a treble. Yeah, there's been Bayern's teams that won a treble, but to go and win it unbeaten through all your campaigns, and also go unbeaten in the DFB Pokal and the Europa League, I don't know. That's an unbelievable season, and it's unbelievable what Xabi Alonso has done. He took a team in disarray when he took over in October 2022. He was able to guide them back into a mid-table sort of positioning. Mid-table positioning. I believe they finished, or not mid-table. They finished in Europa League position. So I think they finished around sixth place. Which is a great achievement, getting them back up, because they were really low in the table. I believe, I forgot what they were, but I know they were definitely in the bottom half. They were really, really low. He was able to take them back up into sixth place, and then in the following season to achieve, in the following season to achieve what he's been able to do. Absolutely brilliant. He won the German Football Manager of the Year a couple of days ago, I believe, and he ran away with it because, well, it's not even close, honestly. And the style of play that they play is an appealing sort of style of play, and it is very enjoyable to watch. So hats off to Bayern Leverkusen, but now season is over. You don't get to cash in checks that you cashed in for last season for this season. This season, you got to cash in new checks. You got to make some more money. And Leverkusen have an opportunity for that, and being able to retain their Bundesliga title with the fact that they've kept a lot of, all their main players that were involved in last year's team. The Florian Wirtz, the Granit Xhakas. Jonathan Tah, there was rumors of him going to Bayern Munich. And there's still some rumors happening there in terms of Bayern still going after him. Currently, right now, he's still on the squad and part of Bayern Leverkusen. But I don't think it's going to happen, honestly, because if I think it was going to happen, it would have happened a few weeks ago. I don't, why, it's been a while now. It's been a while now. What's going on here and there? But I don't think Jonathan Tah, he's a good center back. But if Leverkusen were able to lose him, they'd bring in a fee. They could reinvest that sort of money. I don't think it'd be the biggest loss in the world. Their main guys, and the biggest thing that they were able to retain was Xabi Alonso. Xabi Alonso that was sought upon by Bayern Munich and Liverpool. They were able to keep Xabi Alonso, the manager, that were able to guide them up to where they are now. That's the big thing that they were able to accomplish this summer. Xabi Alonso staying, wanting to be part of a project, wanting to build something special for Leverkusen. That's the best thing that can happen for them. So yeah, I don't think there are going to be any sort of pushovers. But Bayern Munich, they're going to be a relatively unknown team in the fact that they're going to be a relatively unknown team in the fact that Vincent Kompany is coming in. This is a manager that's never managed a team with this sort of quality, with this sort of ilk. He's never going to have the expectation that he's going to have stepping into a Bayern job. He managed in not the Dutch league, but the Belgian league at Anderlecht. He managed in the Championship with Burnley. Had one season in the Premier League where they went down with Burnley, but hasn't really had those, sort of real sort of expectations. And now he's going into a team that immediately expects to win a Bundesliga title, and that'll create heavy pressure for him. And he's a new manager in terms of a young manager, new to these sort of expectations. So that's why I say it's a relatively unknown. How does he adapt to that? How do the players adapt to his sort of system? How do they take it in? This is a guy that's very similar of age in terms of some of the players in this team. When you look at when you look at players like Thomas Muller, Thomas Muller is 2 years younger, or 4 years younger than he's 4 years younger than Jurgen Klopp. I mean, not Jurgen Klopp, than Vincent Kompany. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna be very, very interesting. Now, going back to Bayern Munich, they've also had a very good transfer window, in my opinion. They brought in Michael Olise, a potential world-class talent from Crystal Palace. They brought in João Palhinha, Fulham defender, who has the ability to do a lot of the defensive work in the midfield, but also has a great passing range. And it's interesting to see what happens now with Joshua Kimmich, with João Palhinha coming in. I think this pushes João Kimmich permanently to right back now, which I think, is kind of happening already. But they were able to sign Hiroki Ito, the Japanese center half from Stuttgart. They signed Brian Zaragoza, sort of a young sort of player from Granada, player sort of the future. And then they were able to sign Eric Dyer after the loan on a free transfer. So they've been busy in the window, and they've gotten, specifically with Michael Olise and João Palhinha, two sort of players that can immediately make a difference with this team. And Hiroki Ito. They have signed 3 players that will immediately make a difference in this team, add squad depth. I think the biggest thing was Vincent Kompany. The biggest issue that he needs to solve, and it's kind of it's kind of good that that he used to play this sort of position, and that's the center back. They've been a center back travesty at Bayern Munich over the past few years. They've spent ridiculous amount of monies, high amount of monies on De Ligt, on Dayot Upamecano, on De Ligt, Upamecano. It goes on and on. The names are blanking right now. But Kim Min-jae. They've spent a ridiculous amount of money on center halves over these past few years, but they have not been able to have that partnership, that solid partnership, game in, game out, to make the difference. They have not had that partnership, despite all the money that they've invested at the center halves. They've had De Ligt, who has a lot of injury issues, never been consistent at the club. Upamecano, who's a mistake waiting to happen. Kim Min-jae, who's made mistakes this season. They need to create that sort of consistency in that center back position. There needs to be a sort of consistency. Hiroki Ito coming in, they hope that he's the answer. But Vincent Kompany, he has to develop that, and I think he will. I think he'll be able to handle that center back issue. They also have Josip Stanisic, who's a outside center back sort of player, could play center back. He's coming in from loan, had a good season at Leverkusen. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. They have some ability player. They really are the biggest contenders to Leverkusen, in my opinion, because if you have to say Leipzig. They're gonna be losing Dani Olmo, even though they retain Xavi Simons. Can they take that next step there to compete with Leverkusen? I just don't quite think so. Dortmund, they had a poor season last season. Now Nuri Sahin coming in, despite the fact that they reached the Champions League final last season, they had a poor Bundesliga campaign. Now it's Nuri Sahin coming in again, relative unknown. This is a guy that's never really managed at that sort of level. So yeah, I think Leverkusen can most definitely retain their Bundesliga title. When you look at the lack of an experience from the coaches from Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, and then the rest of the teams, Stuttgart, I don't think they can make that sort of jump. Same with Leipzig. I think Leverkusen find themselves in a good spot right now because of the players that they've been able to retain and the manager that they were able to retain this summer. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about the conclusion of Chelsea preseason and whether or not they should be worried entering the start of the season.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we talked about Bayern Leverkusen and being able to retain their Bundesliga title. We move on to talk about the conclusion of Chelsea preseason and whether or not they should be worried entering the start of the season. Obviously, this is not difficult. I'm more than comfortable talking about this. I'm more than comfortable being critical about my club. But it's an interesting conversation having this because this is my favorite team, Chelsea. I, as a journalist, I'm not afraid to admit I do root for teams. I'm not like those journalists out there. I have no dog in the fight, or whatever the saying is. I just report like, bro, no, I'll admit it. I am a fan of Chelsea. But I'm not afraid to be critical about them. I think the way that this club has been operated over the past few years has been nothing short of a disgrace. And if I could use stronger words on this network, I would. But I have rules. I have rules that I have to follow. But it's been more than just a disgrace the way that they've been handled since the selling of Roman Abramovich has had to do. Selling it post that Russia-Ukraine geopolitical, stuff. Since that, happened, Chelsea have been in complete disarray in terms of transfer window, in terms of transfer strategy, in terms of managerial searching, in terms of players on the pitch, in terms of the quality that we've seen, in terms of everything we've seen, in terms of the results. It's been all a mess at Chelsea, and it's really sucked the life out of me as a Chelsea fan. It's been really hard to watch, and it's been really sad to watch. It's been really, really sad to watch, and it's been very, very, very disappointing. I haven't seen much seasons where I've been so not looking forward to a season. I have this upcoming season with Chelsea coming in, because look, whenever Chelsea were able to make the first bit of progress since that new ownership group came in terms of the period of end of last season, getting a little bit of comfortable results, getting back into a European positioning after a good run, I believe in 15 games, only losing one, some stat like that. After having such a good run, first good signs that they've shown under a manager. They have, I don't know if it's fired or alienated enough so he quits, but basically Pochettino parted ways with Chelsea, or Chelsea fired him. I still don't understand what exactly happened. The report was saying Pochettino left or whatever, it was mutual. I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't care. Why worry about the past? With this team right now, though, with Enzo Maresca coming in, Enzo Maresca, he has a style of play. He's been coached with Pep Guardiola. So obviously there's going to be an emphasis on being able to be possession-oriented, being able to control the ball, playing a very, very high line, being able to suffocate a team in the attacking half. But Chelsea does not have the most, number one, in terms of being able to play out of the back. They're not the best team in terms of that. They don't have the quality at the back in terms of players to be able to control the ball. I'm talking about from goalkeeper and defenders to play out of the back. We saw mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake this preseason by trying to play out. And then in terms of playing a high line, you want to play a high line, but the defenders are not particularly pacey enough to play a high line. And even if they are, a high line cannot succeed if, the player in midfield has 30 minutes to pick out a pass. And if he has 30 minutes to pick out a pass, then there's no way you can succeed playing a high line, because it's just too easy to play that ball in behind every single time, and eventually they'll burn you. And that's exactly what Real Madrid did. And it's very, very, very frustrating to watch. And the best part about all this is, look, you could say, okay, Chelsea, they just need to, ease their way into the season, They just need to calm themselves, and they need to game by game progress and ease their way into the season with Enzo Maresca, start developing more style of play under him, start retaining his tactics, start being able to play his sort of football, having the real tactical understanding and identity of the way Enzo Maresca wants to play. They can slowly develop that throughout the season, you would say. But, Chelsea happened to open up their season, their Premier League season, against mighty Manchester City. That's what they get to open up their Premier League campaign to. They get to go play against Manchester City. What a great start for them. That's the perfect way to open up your season, wasn't it? And really, the Premier League, by the way, they really don't like us. They really don't like us. This is like how many times are they going to give us this sort of, top six sort of team in the opening game of the season? It's ridiculous. I go back to a few years ago. We played Manchester United, where we got thumped by them. We played last year. We played Liverpool. This season we played Manchester City. What is this with giving us these ridiculously top 6 games in the opening game of the season? Save those games for spread them out. Why are you giving those sort of games in the beginning of the season? It's nonsense. And it only happens to Chelsea. What other big time, what, in terms of opening game of the season, what big time game have you seen besides, over the past few years that did not include Chelsea? It happens to be Chelsea happens to play those big top 6 teams in the opening game of the season every single time. This time around, they start off against Manchester City, and look, and I don't care if the game is at Stamford Bridge. You see how we've been trying to play, and obviously it's gonna, you're gonna make mistakes. You gotta get the mistakes out, and you gotta ease your way. I remember Unai Emery at Arsenal. He wanted to play a specific way, and they made so many mistakes trying to play out, and they looked very dysfunctional. But he stayed with it. We saw, that's what managers too, top class managers. They don't try to switch to plan B. They try to make plan A better. And Chelsea, if they want to do that, they want to be very, very open in terms of possession, wanting to dominate possession, want to press up as soon as they lose the ball, want to play very, very high line, and want to play out of the back. With this current set of Chelsea players, they are not ready to play that against the big teams. So if they open up their season against Manchester City and they play that really, really high line, and, you allow yourself to, get pressed when you try to play out of the back and get pressed by these City players, these ferocious City players. And if you allow, De Bruyne to have 60, 70, 75, 80, 90, 100 minutes on the ball, unlimited time on the ball, to pick out, the likes of Haaland and Doku, and those players going in behind this Chelsea's back line, Manchester City will win that game by 48. It'll be 48-0. I mean, it'll be a complete domination. I'm just being for real. Manchester City will love the opportunity to play Chelsea in the opening game of the season. The way that they've played in preseason, the mistakes in terms of playing out the back, the mistakes in terms of defending with the high line, the overall just lackluster display. And yes, preseason doesn't mean anything, but still, if they do that, But I think in terms of the opening game, forget about it. It's going to be a wash. Chelsea are not going to win. No chance. But I think Chelsea have a chance to really develop this sort of identity under Enzo Maresca. If he's able, he's going to take a lot of criticism early. Let's be honest. He's going to take a lot of criticism early because it's going to take time for these Chelsea players to adapt. They always take time to adapt to a new manager, and it seems like with this current set of Chelsea players, it's going to take even more time because look at the way that they adapted to Mauricio Pochettino. This is a team that doesn't really pick up new bits of information quickly. And has a lack of experience, have a lack of leadership there. So it's going to take time for them, but I do think they can be a deadly outfit. I do think they can be a threatening team. I do think they can, contend for top 4. I don't think it's all negative with Chelsea. I do think there's some sort of players in there that if they're able to progress, like, some of these big time signings, they really need to make their money's worth in terms of Chelsea would need to make their money's worth out of some of these big time signings. Specifically, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Mikhailo Mudryk. I'm trying to think. Those are the 3 big ones. These are all $100 million plus sort of players. And for these players, Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, and Mikhailo Mudryk, for these players to be worth it, the amount of money Chelsea have to spend, they all need to develop into being world-class players. And if these players do develop into world-class players, it completely changed the way in terms of how Chelsea play football. It completely changed the way in terms of how teams go in facing Chelsea, the fear factor. It completely changes everything. The players that were, the investment put in this team, the amount of money spent specifically on those 3 players needs to pay off for Chelsea to really be the team that they're trying to be. That's the biggest thing as well. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll discuss the men's Olympic soccer bronze medal game preview.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we talked about the conclusion of Chelsea's preseason and whether or not they should be worried entering the start of the season. We move on to talk about the men's Olympic bronze medal game. These are the 2 teams that lost the semifinal, and usually with these sort of third place sort of matches, they tend to not have huge significance. I'm talking specifically, the European Championship, they don't have one. Copa America, they don't have one. They don't have third place game. But I'm talking about the World Cup third place games. They don't typically happen to have the most, in terms of most interest amongst fans, and they're kind of just played for just to be played. But it's a little bit different with the Olympic Games in terms of men's soccer, or even women's soccer with the bronze medal game, because the bronze medal is a big thing. Everyone, it's an Olympic event. Winning the bronze medal, it's a huge significance in terms of Olympians. It goes into the medal count in terms of the nation, and bronze medal, it means something. It signifies something. You get on the podium, you get to hear your national anthem being played amongst the top 3 teams. It means something to win a bronze medal. You go home with the medal. You go home with the Olympic medal. You're an Olympic medalist, a bronze medalist. So there's significance there. And then there's also significance with Morocco and Egypt. Number 1, these are 2 teams that are both vying for their first medal at the men's soccer Olympic Games. These are 2 teams that have never medaled at the Olympic Games. In fact, these are both of them. They're going to be their top finishes no matter what. No matter who wins this game, this will be their top finish ever at a men's soccer Olympic Games. So there's that in that fact that they want to be the first. They want to earn their first medal for their country, and it'll be huge for the development in terms of what Morocco has been able to develop into a football nation over the past few years, or Egypt on the other hand, that are trying to start something special as well, that see what Morocco has been able to do and want to replicate that sort of success on their own. That's going to be a big factor too, winning this bronze medal game. Another thing is, huge rivalry amongst these two teams in terms of these two North African nations. Huge rivalry there, huge spirit there, sort of a derby, sort of an international derby. One of the best African derbies. It's not quite like Egypt, Algeria, which could get really, really, really rough. It is a really amazing derby, but but there's still a rivalry between these two African African teams, between Morocco and Egypt. There's still a rivalry amongst these sort of teams, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how this game played out. There's a lot of youth ability between the two teams, with the best U23 sides, mostly the best, and then you also have the experience of players like Akraf Hakimi and Mohamed El Nene, which makes it even more, which will make the game just that a little bit more interesting, and it's really great to have two African nations fighting in the third place game. It really shows the sort of the rise of African football, the ability of African football. You're seeing these sort of, you're seeing African teams in the past, they've kind of focused all their attention on the first team and really neglect the development aspect, because that's how you make the best national team and develop the best players from your country, is when you focus on the youth, you implement the tactical understanding and good ability in terms of being able to play tight spaces and all that. You implement that in the youth sort of players, and they gradually come up to be those sort of world-class players that Morocco has started to emphasize, that Egypt, as we see, are trying to start emphasizing. And when you do that, you tend to value these sort of Olympic Games, because these Olympic Games are good experience for those sort of youth players to take that next level, and it has a chance to be the sort of platform for Morocco, for Egyptian youth players to make that move to Europe. We've seen I believe it was Adli from Egypt. He's had a very good tournament. He could put on a he's put on a good showing for himself, for his resume. So it's great. The two wingers from Morocco, I don't know exactly their name, but they've been brilliant in this tournament. They've put this on their resume. And despite both these teams seeing their gold medal hopes taken away from them in devastating sort of situations, they'll still be looking to really make this a hugely successful tournament and being able to medal for the Olympic Games to get on the podium. Egypt and Morocco have had similar journeys. They both progressed as group winners. They both had disappointing games. Egypt did in their opening game against Dominican Republic. Morocco did in their second game against Ukraine, despite dominating, losing that game. But in general, they've been really successful in this tournament. Egypt, they were able to go on after this disappointing opening game, and they were able to get some great wins against Spain. They played Spain in their final game. I believe that they played. Who did they play in their second game? They played Uzbekistan, and then they played Uzbekistan. Yeah, they played Uzbekistan. Then they played Spain, and were able to win the group after beating Spain. Morocco, on the other hand, they started off their opening of the tournament by beating Argentina, one of the teams that were seen as heavy favorites in this in terms of the players that they brought. They brought in players like Julian Alvarez, Nicolas Otamendi, Thiago Almada. But they lost to Morocco in that opening game in a very, very crazy game. They equalized at the end. There was firecrackers and stuff thrown on the field, forced everyone to evacuate. The players were sent into the locker room. We thought it was because the full-time whistle was blown. No, it was not. Once the players got in, they were saying the game is not over. They still need to do a review. The players come on an hour, 40 minutes later, 2 hours later. They do the VAR review. It's deemed that it wasn't a goal, and then they play on the rest of the game, in which Morocco ended up being the winners. And at the end, it was fair because it was offsides, but it was a crazy game. But this, they won that opening game. They lost to Ukraine. And that second game in which they really dominated, it was really horrible loss. But they capped off their campaign by destroying Iraq, which actually helped them a lot entering the knockout stages, because that destroying that they did of Iraq in that final game put them above Argentina in terms of goal differential, which allowed them to take on the U.S. instead of France in that quarterfinals, which is two completely different opposition. And when they took on U.S. and they completely, melted them, destroyed them in every which way, waxed them and then waxed them again, 4-0. They moved on to the semifinal, and then both of these teams had very, very heartbreaking losses in the semifinals. They both were able to get the lead, they were both able to take the lead in the match. Morocco did it earlier in the first half. Egypt did it a little bit later in the second half, around the 60th minute. And then in terms of Morocco, they conceded 2 second-half goals. Fermin Lopez was able to get the initial breakthrough, and they just couldn't get that equalizer at the end. They lost to Spain. And then in terms of Egypt, they were holding on. They were playing a little bit more defensive, and they just conceded that goal. Jean-Philippe Mateta, a lot of space between the two center backs, and then they got a red card, which in that extra time, and then Jean-Philippe Mateta was able to get on the end of a cross, of a nick on a cross, and the rest is history there. Both very, very disappointing semifinals, and the key is, the motivation is going to be there. Both teams want a medal, but how do these teams mentally respond to very disappointing semifinals is hard to get straight back up for a bronze medal game. But I think that's not going to be an issue in the fact that both of these teams still want to make their nation proud. They still want to earn the first ever medal for the country. So I don't think motivation will definitely not be a problem. Maybe with if this was one of the bigger teams that have already won a medal, yes, you could say that, but not with these two teams. Number one, these are two teams, they're going to have a bunch of U23 players because of the Olympic Games. These are sort of players that have never really been at this sort of level yet. They've never played this sort of high level of football in terms of the Olympic Games, in terms of people watching. It'll be a packed stadium, be packed with Moroccans. The atmosphere is going to be great. So I think you cannot underestimate this bronze medal game. I think it's going to be very, very fascinating. I would really love to see. I think it will get chippy at times. I think it will be aggressive. I think the rivalry is going to show. But overall, I do think when you base this purely on quality, I do think Morocco has the edge. I think Morocco has better ability. Morocco has better quality front to bottom. And I think Morocco's going to be able to control possession of the ball, create more clear goal-scoring opportunities. I think in terms of midfield, they'll be able to retain the ball more. I think the wingers will give Egyptian fullbacks problems. I think the center backs will struggle to contain Sofiane Rahimi. So I will give Morocco the edge here, and I think Morocco will get it done and will earn the bronze medal for their country. And it's really deserving in terms of the support that they've had at the Olympic Games. Those fans deserve something. So yeah. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines. before the break, um, we discussed the men's Olympic bronze medal game. We move on to discuss some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. We got to start off with Chelsea. It seems like they have been linked with Samu Omorodion, and it's very like it's happening. We saw Fabrizio Romano saying, "Here we go." It's around 35 million euros fixed fee from Atletico Madrid. Samuel Omorodion, he's actually part of the Spain Olympic team. He scored a goal actually a few days ago. Sort of a target man, sort of striker. It's gonna be a 7-year contract for him, and yeah, it's interesting. I think there's some ability there, but again, it's sort of a move. It's like the goalkeeper situation. They don't want to solve this sort of issue by spending the for the top class. So they're getting these sort of pieces. It's another similar signing in terms of Nicholas Jackson, not in terms of style, but in terms of, and not in terms of like the way that they play, but in terms of the level, in terms of how it feels. That sort of $30 million area. It's like signing Philip Gordon as a goalkeeper after signing Robert Sanchez. You're signing a bunch of these pieces, right? But you're not getting the main man at top, and I don't know. I don't understand this. Maybe they're expecting, Samuel Oromodian to really be that sort of next big thing, but, I don't know. I don't see that right now, in my opinion. I don't see that right now. And if Atletico saw it, I would definitely don't think they'd let him go, and they would not let him go for this cheap. He is 20 years old, so there's potential there. But, yeah, I don't know. He scored 8 goals this season, which is it's good. He's look, Omar Dion, he has the size and physicality and sort of physical nature to be a number 9 in the Premier League. He could be that sort of target man, and he's also has some technical ability, and he's fast, and he's physical, and he's tall, and he has some technical ability, but he's a sort of player that has not had enough seasons in the first season on the first team, and I don't know. I think he's a project, but I think Chelsea, for them to really solve this number 9 issue, they could just go and get Osimhen. That's my thing. Why are you signing another player like Nicholas Jackson, who may get there, may not? You already have Nicholas Jackson. You already have Armando Broja. You've signed those sort of players that can maybe be it, maybe be not. Go ahead. You have had a number 9 issue for years. Go out and get the player get the main star. Go out and get it. You've had a goalkeeper issue for years. Stop signing your Petrovic and Jorgensen and Robert Sanchez, all sort of these players. Maybe one of them can turn out to be okay and turn out to be good enough, blah, blah, blah. No, go out and get Mike Mignon. You're Chelsea Football Club. Get the best in class. Get the best in class. What is this? I don't understand this at all. But, sometimes with Chelsea's sort of, once in a while they'll luck out. They'll completely luck out and get a player like Cole Palmer. And maybe this guy turns out to be the next big thing for Chelsea, like Cole Palmer was able to be. But there's still a real lack of transfer strategy, and in terms of just real belief that I have amongst this team, in terms of being able to build a side that can compete for the Premier League again, or a side that can compete to win the Champions League. I don't really see that. And it's sad. It's really sad. Marco Reus, he's going to sign with LA Galaxy on a free transfer. Enzo Fernandez, despite some of the off-season issues that we have seen, he is going to be set for a leadership role at Chelsea. Chelsea are still trying to find ways to get rid of Romelu Lukaku. It's going to be interesting whether or not how they do it. Currently right now, he is a Chelsea player. I'd like to see what is he doing right now. Is he? I know he's not part of Chelsea's thing, but what is Chelsea doing? I mean, what is Romelu Lukaku doing for preseason right now? Has he returned to? Has he actually gone to preseason with Chelsea? I don't know, but that's interesting. Arsenal was able to defeat Bayern Leverkusen 4-1 today behind the goals from Zinchenko, Trossard, Gabriel Jesus, which all came in the first half, and then Kai Havertz got that second half goal in the 65th minute. They were actually up 4-0 in this game. Besides, and then in the 76th later on, Holzek was able to get the goal for Bayer Leverkusen. Gabriel Jesus, one of the goals was really a sublime goal, and Arsenal, they've had not the biggest, most brilliant start in terms of preseason, but they've been able to step it up, and it's interesting how big of an impact Jesus is gonna have for Arsenal this season. I'm interested to see that. Arsenal had 9 shots in this game compared to 7 for Leverkusen. 6 shots on target for Arsenal compared to 2 for Leverkusen. 24 touches in the opponent box compared to 12, and they had 44% of the possession. Arsenal to 56 for Leverkusen. It's a good win for Liverpool, and again, you don't want to look into preseason too hardly, because again, it's just preseason. Trevor Chalobah, who's been an outcast sort of at Chelsea, not being involved in the preseason squad, really getting pushed out of the club essentially by Chelsea, despite being a great servant of the club over the past few years, being one of the more consistent players that we've had at this club. He's been pushed out of Chelsea essentially, and he's being targeted by Crystal Palace as a possible replacement for Mark Gahey, because we have seen the links that Mark Gahey has been getting to Newcastle. It seems more and more likely as days go on. Newcastle, they're very close to that sort of deal to bring in this sort of center half, which will require Crystal Palace to replace him. And Trevor Chalobah is listed as an option, which I think will be a great move for Trevor Chalobah, because he's gonna be playing minutes game in, game out, gonna get some high quality minutes playing game in, game out. Crystal Palace, they do a very good job of developing their sort of young players, and they stand by them, and they believe in them, and they put them in positions to succeed. And Trevor Chalobah, he's not going to be put in to be asked to do things that he's not really comfortable with. I think that's a good move for him, Trevor Chalobah. Conor Gallagher, he's going to be going to Atletico Madrid. Brilliant move for him in the fact that I think he's playing for the perfect sort of manager. Like, he's going to be playing, he's going to do the similar things in terms of Rodrigo de Paul. He's going to be able to put a foot in, work very, very hard. He has the quality to play on the ball too. He's good enough to play in midfield for Atletico Madrid, do the sort of things that, you know, the past midfielders at Atletico Madrid done. You work really, really hard for Diego Simeone, and I think Atletico Madrid, you're getting a guy with some quality. He has that sort of ability to get a goal once in a while too from long range. He has that surprise factor to him, real ability there. He can control in midfield, and honestly, he's been Chelsea's best in midfield. He was Chelsea's best midfield player last season, despite, you know, $250 million worth of players playing right next to him. He's the one that was the real main standout in that team for a guy that's being sold for, I believe, around 40 million. 40 million, I believe, or 30, no. Yeah, around 40 million or so. So, yeah, it's great for both teams. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us. So please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of